Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. I'm 29, female, married to a 28 male who's serving a prison sentence of 5 years. He is currently in his second year of serving, and with good behavior, he'll be out in the next 2 years. We have a 4-year-old daughter, and I was taking care of her. So I've been contemplating for a while about leaving my husband and just needed the right time to take that step. I know how hot-headed he can be and didn't want my decision of leaving to affect my daughter in any bad way. For some context, my husband was sentenced for aggressively beating up another guy from his workplace. He always had anger issues, and it wasn't that big of a shock for me that he ended up in prison. The shock hit me after he was gone, and I got the much needed space to realize how toxic my own relationship in itself was. He conditioned me to believe that it was okay for him to be aggressive as long as I'm not the one he's being aggressive at. Honestly, I felt like I was special for being treated differently from others and used to feel proud that I'm the only one who could get him to calm down. I dated him for 5 years before getting married, and it was easier to turn a blind eye to the abuse than to accept that my relationship is toxic. Even after going to jail, he didn't stop his emotional abuse. I used to deposit money in his commissary account because he lost his job. For people who don't know, prisoners are allowed to earn in jail, and the money is deposited in their commissary account, which sort of is an Amazon account. The funds are used to buy essential items like shampoo, soap, snacks, books, etc., depending on your status. Even though I was struggling with finances after paying the damages for his assault, he said to me that I can't let him die in there. He played the victim card, saying how hard it is for him to survive there and the funds I'm providing are barely enough to pay for his security. I don't know the complete inner workings, but I can see it now, how he used my love for him as his ace and played me to get whatever he wanted. Now that I've come to realize this, I wanted out of this marriage. I couldn't let my daughter learn that it's okay to put up with a man that uses violence to protect his family and justifies putting a man in hospital by saying it was all for his love. But I also knew his temper and that if I acted rashly, he was going to pull something to mess up my life. And just as I expected, he did exactly that. On my last visitation, I told him I'll be filing for divorce and that he shouldn't try to manipulate me into staying because it's not going to work anymore. I also told him that the DOC has informed me about how he doesn't have enough funds left to pay for his next order of essentials, and he should ask his parents or someone else for the money, as I'm not depositing a single penny into that accounting. Of course, he got aggressive after hearing, and thankfully, the visitation time was over before he could shout his lungs out at me. Seeing how he did start banging on the table, I was glad for the guard standing near us. Anyway, I ran out of there as fast as I could. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it'll burst out of my chest. The next day, I contacted my lawyer I had hired before and asked him if he could rush the process. He told me it'll take a couple of days more for the papers to be delivered, so I waited patiently. I had applied for full custody of my daughter, and with my husband's history of violence and being a convict, it wasn't going to be hard to get sole custody. But just 2 days after that, I found out that my father-in-law had filed for emergency custody of my child. In case you don't know, a relative can file for emergency custody if they can prove that the parent in charge is dangerous or inefficient mentally to care for their ward. When I was served a notice, it was mentioned that my father-in-law was trying to use my mental health as an excuse to take my daughter away. He made a case using the text exchanges between me and my mother-in-law. They were several months old and was around the time when I was really battling with depression. She was my only mental support at that time, and I told her most of the things that went on in my mind. There were texts like I sometimes want to run away or that single parenting is really hard. I even mentioned how financially it takes everything out of me to make sure my daughter gets regular meals, and I have to starve myself because of it. He used my mental health to prove that I can't take care of a child and that he should have custody of my daughter until my husband is out of prison. The first thing I did was call mother in law and ask her how she could let him use the text chain as evidence. She was the only one in this family who I really thought would be on my side. Our relationship was more than that of a mother in law and daughter in law, and I simply couldn't believe that she let him do this to me. And when I called her, she told me how father in law already knew about the text exchanges and screenshotted the conversation without her knowing about it. She said that she didn't even know he had filed for emergency custody. And even though I was glad to know, she didn't betray my trust. I still couldn't keep on talking to her. Her being in the same house as my father in law complicated the situation a lot, and I needed to be safe. Now I have cut all contact with my in laws and my husband, and I'm preparing for my hearing that is due in 4 days. Thankfully, the weekend gave me extra time to prepare for it, and I do have a lot of things in my arsenal. I've been collecting evidence for a while now, just in case my husband tries to use my insanity to take away my daughter, and I just have to use it at this hearing. I don't think I'm wrong to do so. All I want is my daughter to grow up without having her father in her life. One thing that concerns me is that it's not her choice and I'm forcing it on her. Does that make me an a-hole? So the hearing went well. Thankfully, the lawyer I hired to take care of my divorce actually referred me to one of his colleagues who was an expert in custody cases, and he really came through. His first advice to me was to mentally prepare myself because if my father in law was able to pass the ex parte hearing and got the officials to actually consider this case as needing a hearing, he's going to have a lot more than what I know of. He said that I need a well rounded defense. He went as far as to get a full medical checkup of my daughter just to prove that she's healthy both physically and mentally. We used my account statements to show that I make more than enough now since I got a promotion to provide a good life for my daughter. He also asked me to round up people who could testify about my character and used our family videos to prove that we were happy even without my husband. The biggest factor in me winning the case was my father in law's timing. He used text chains from months ago, and the fact that I lived with an aggressive husband without recognizing how toxic the relationship was as his biggest card to prove I'm mentally unequipped to take care of a child. But thankfully, the psych evaluation I took only a day ago showed how I'm perfectly fine to be a mother, and the judge ruled in my favor. Even though I knew that this was going to happen and my lawyer has assured me my daughter wouldn't be taken away, the whole thing was a roller coaster of anxiety and panic attacks. And now that it's over, I am crying out of relief. My mother in law came to live with me today. She told me that after the stunt her husband pulled without her consent, he really pulled out the last straw and she couldn't stay with him. She has always been the voice of reason in the family and the sole person who actually criticized her son when he was aggressive and violent. My father in law has always praised his son for teaching people how to behave, and the fact that he himself is a red flag was the reason I was able to talk to my mother in law about my situation all those months ago. Even though she chose to stay in her marriage all this time, she really advised me to get out while I still can. Not once did she belittle me for being ignorant or an idiot, and I was really thankful for her support. So when she came over to my house one day and said that she has moved out of her house and would help me raise my daughter if I'm willing to let her be in my life, I was really happy. I know a lot of you will say that I'm being played again and that I shouldn't trust my mother in law. But after being in a manipulative relationship for over 9 years, I know what it's like to be manipulated, and my mother in law is being genuine when she said that she cared about me. My divorce was finalized today, and I am glad I got sole custody. I had told my daughter years ago that daddy has gone away for a while and she can only send him letters until he returns. I did that because I didn't want her to come to prison with me and see her father being a convict. It was my twisted way of shielding my 4-year-old. And now that I have divorced her dad, I am planning on letting her believe the same thing until she turns 6 or 7. Once she's capable of understanding things that are serious, I will tell her the truth. Until then, I want her to live her innocent life. Am I making a mistake here? Also, I got the house we were living in during the divorce settlement, and I'm planning on selling the place and moving somewhere where I can start a new life. With my ex mother in law living with me, whom I refer to as mom now, I think I'll be able to manage raising a daughter and a job. NTA, you might be slow and very late to realize the reality of your situation, but in no way are you an a-hole. You basically have a free get out of jail card. No puns intended. With your husband being in prison, and you should totally use it to your advantage. NTA, your daughter is a child that has no idea about the kind of situation that's going on. As her mother, it's on you to make the right decisions for her, even if it means making her live a life without a father. That makes you brave, not an a-hole. My husband and I have an 11-month-old baby. My in-laws help out with childcare Monday to Thursday on most weeks because my husband does shift work in healthcare, about 3 to 4 8-hour shifts a week. And I work for my own company and wasn't able to take mat leave at all. Friday to Sunday, I mostly take care of the baby. My husband told me he needs personal time, so he needs to golf at least once a week. He says since his parents are helping out, he should be able to go during the weekday any day, and I should not have an issue with it. I agreed to once a week. He, for the most part, sticks to it, but sometimes goes out twice. Last week, I finally took some time for myself and met up with a friend for 4 hours in total. Hubby happens also to be golfing all afternoon and didn't come home till the evening. That week, Sunday, we had planned for a couple of golf double date with our friends and decided to give the in-laws Thursday off so they can help babysit on Sunday instead. The in-laws were furious that it wasn't discussed with them first, but also that we go out too much. We ended up apologizing and promising to consult with them in the future first. On Sunday night, hubby told me he cannot watch the kid Monday morning because he had to do some paperwork and then go to work after. Then he said he was going on Wednesday night to watch a baseball game with his buddy, and if I was okay with that, I said no problem. Then next morning, he tells me he planned golf for tomorrow during the day and that he also won't be home for the evening because work is throwing a social dinner. He asked me if it'd be all right with me. I said, maybe it's not such a good idea, as your parents were just mad at you last week. I also feel that 3 social events in such a tight period is not appropriate. If you aren't working and have the free time, you could spend more of it with your 11-month-old baby. I'm not saying this because I want the same freedom. I simply feel that as a new father, he should place more priority on spending time with the baby than to do 3 social events in a row. He did not like my answer and says he can make up the time by spending some other time with the baby. He also said he should never need to justify his personal time and he's not needed as I have help from the in-laws. And also, why am I questioning his social plans when I met with a friend last week? He said I'm illogical. I make him feel guilty, anxiety, that he wouldn't be with me if we weren't married and had a baby. Later, I told him that if he feels he has done enough dad duties, then he can go for his socials as he's an adult who has made up his mind, but he shouldn't ask for my opinion because I would still not see it as reasonable. This was not okay with him as he wanted me to change my way of thinking fundamentally. AITA for thinking he's taking too many liberties with his personal time. NTA, but he is massively, especially with, if it wasn't for marriage and the baby, I wouldn't be with you. That is the most horrible thing to say to another person. Was he actually happy, excited to be a dad? Did he want the baby in the first place? Did you two have issues before the baby was born? You're also a little bit of an a-hole with how you treat the in-laws. They are not free babysitters whenever you please. They are family doing you a huge favor. NTA, but both of you need to get your shit together. Changing days on your in-laws is not cool, and nor is treating them like staff. Your husband needs to have work as his first priority and baby as his second. His social life is third. If he is not at work, he should be with the baby. If he wants to organize a social outing, he should arrange it with his parents, not assume that they have the baby every Monday to Thursday. Honestly, he sounds like he has not adjusted to being a parent and still acts single. I, 40 female, live with two of my children, 19 male and 16 female. My ex-husband used to give me €230 for every child every month. Once the kids started working, they both started contributing €200 each every month instead of their father's child support. For medical reasons, I don't work. I get a government refund of €460 every month. We're a very low income family and barely make ends meet every month with only €860, from which I have to buy food, toiletries, and pay all the bills. Earlier this summer, my son's girlfriend, 20 female, came to live with us full time. She used to spend here 3 to 4 days of the week, but eventually she started living here every day because A, she and my son have more privacy here with their own room, whereas they don't have a room at their parents' home, and B, her work is closer from here. I feel it's unfair that I barely spend any money on myself, but she's living here for free. This week, I decided that it was finally time to view my opinion on the matter. I told them both that since they're both employed adults, they both had to start paying their part, €200 each every month. If they were to go live on their own, they would be spending so much more than that on rent alone, which they both know. I could see that my son was flustered during the talk because he knows I'm right, and that it's not fair that I'm making sacrifices while his girlfriend doesn't contribute a penny. They don't want to go live on their own, and living at her parents' house permanently whilst they don't have to pay, they won't have any privacy. Then girlfriend said that she doesn't think it's fair that she pays €200 because she's not comfortable here because of my 3 dogs. She's right that the house is a mess and maybe we should all clean a bit more. But she's still making use of all the food and amenities here, and I don't see how a dirty house has anything to do with that. To add insult to injury, her parents are adamant that she shouldn't pay for whatever reason. They encouraged her to go eat and shower in their house so she doesn't have to pay anything, even though she's still making use of the internet, water, electricity while here. She keeps saying that she doesn't have to pay a thing or do any chores at her parents' house. I understand that people live differently than we do, but I want to know if I'm the a-hole here for requesting that as long as she's living here, she pays her part as a grown employed adult. First of all, thank you all for your contribution to this post. I showed this post to my son. He was actually the one who encouraged me to post it. He showed it to his girlfriend and she got upset. She decided to move back at her parents' house. I really didn't want her to leave because I have nothing against her and loved her as my own child. Also, I know this will impact my son negatively because he won't be seeing her every day. But I can't financially support a full grown adult, and even if I could, I shouldn't have to do it. For all those who are asking, I'm not in the US. I'm in a European country, and things here are a bit different. 16-year-olds are considered adults by state. Their father isn't paying child support anymore as per court or the divorce contract that states that once kids start working, gain full-time salary, he's not obligated to pay child support anymore. He does still help the children financially, individually, in things they might need. Also, please don't call someone who can't work for medical reasons lazy. I already feel like shit for whatever I have to go through. Being called lazy is just too much. LMAO. She does not want to pay rent because she's uncomfortable with dogs, but is comfortable enough to live with them rent free? Girl, bye. NTA. NTA. She's living in your house, using your utilities, food, and such. Even if she were to shower at her parents' house and eat there too, she's still using your stuff because, well, she lives there. Her saying she didn't have to do so at her parents' house makes absolutely no sense. She's not there. She's more than welcome to move back if she wishes. I'm sure you're not holding her hostage. If she doesn't want to contribute or do chores, then she should move back.